Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, it'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
Hardcore football.
Here comes the scribe. Ben Goessling covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. Beloved scribe at Ben Goessling via the tweet machine. Follow him as 9 to noon does if you are so inclined. And Ben's inclusion is courtesy of Standard Heating and Air and StandardHeating.com. And here he is.
Don't you think Tuesdays at TCO? No, and I love having Ben Goessling in the studio here this morning.
It's been a minute.
Kind of miss seeing him on Tuesdays at TCO, though. Kind of enjoyed TCO Tuesdays.
Yeah, right into Flores. Yeah.
Absolutely. 10 a.m. Mm-hmm. Ben's there. Lavelle exit. Goessling enters. Mm-hmm. I kind of enjoyed that schedule we had going.
Well, what we all truly enjoyed from different facets was the feel-good season the Minnesota Vikings just had. And I steal that compound adjective from something that I either read in the headline of the Star Tribune or via Twitter. The feel-good season is now shrouded with uncertainty. And what percolates with you about all of that? And good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, there is a lot to discuss, and I'm sure we will over the next several months, about how this ended and what it's going to mean for a lot of people, because this starts pretty immediately in terms of the Vikings needing to figure out contracts for Kevin O'Connell, for Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, for Sam Darnold. If that is going to be part of the discussion, they have to decide if it's going to be part of the discussion. And then you have all of these other things that come with it. You have Brian Flores, Josh McCown getting coaching interviews, Grant Udinski reportedly getting a coordinator interview. So you have this thing's kind of happening in two buckets. You have the common business effects of success, where people want to hire your people and at least want to talk to your people. And then you have the way that this team was built, which was on all of these guys with 1-year contracts. And it was kind of this, let's get positions filled to be competitive this year. I don't know that anybody would have predicted that it would have been a 14-win team, but now you have a lot of these contracts that are done. And Kevin O'Connell talked a lot this year about it's nice when we can just close the doors, and this team that nobody expected to do anything and then became this contender that, flamed out in the first round of the playoffs. They were able to shut a lot of that out, but that's over now. I mean, when they lose that game and players are cleaning out their lockers, you get ushered into this other part of the NFL calendar, which is a lot less feel good, to use the phrase I think I put in my story, than what they were going through or what they were doing the last few months was.
Okay, beloved scribe, just a yes or a no for context, and then we will build it from there. Here's the question. Do you expect this offseason the Minnesota Vikings and head coach Kevin O'Connell to get together on a contract extension?
Yes.
Okay, here's the question. Do you expect the extension by the combine, before the combine? I mean, just think about it.
Yes, I do.
We're in Indianapolis, St. Elmo's this, and Harry and Izzy's that, and the convention center this, and subterfuge that.
Yep.
And sneaky conversations all over the place.
JW Marriott Hotel Bar.
Right. It, coaches with red teeth, RA32. So that's important. I mean, at least from like a professional standpoint, I'll be doing radio there. You'll be covering it. It'd be really sweet if the whole thing was done by then.
Yeah, I think it will be. Good. I mean, Mark Wilf said when I talked with the Wilsons in December for that 20th anniversary story, he said we plan to talk to both Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah about their contracts after the season. Both are up after next year. The Wilfs, I have been as gracious in their praise of both of those guys as you could be. I mean, in my conversations with them, the first thing Ziggy Wilf talked about when he got on the phone was, we think we have the right people in place now.
Yeah.
And I think they plan to reward them for that. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about why hasn't it been done yet. This is kind of how they work.
Yeah.
I mean, and they said it in August. It's consistent.
Yeah, I never really thought. I guess I never, after the 13, the work they did to get to the 7, even with the Josh Dobbs trick. I mean, I wasn't thinking about that. Were you?
Well, about the contract stuff?
Yeah, about
not really.
So-and-so got one after 2, and it's, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I'll say this. I thought about it, and I asked about it in August because Mike Zimmer got his first one after 2 years, and Kevin O'Connell's resume through 2 years was almost identical to Mike Zimmer's. So the question came up of, why did you decide not to do it this year? And they didn't really get into a lot of the detail of why they didn't, other than to say that every situation's unique. But you can do the math. I mean, they just drafted a quarterback. How is that going to play out? Whereas Mike Zimmer had his quarterback at that point with Teddy Bridgewater. There's all of that stuff. They won the division in year 1 instead of year 2, so the optics look different. I get all of that. But when I looked at it further, the second and third deals they did with Zimmer were in the final year of his contract, even to the point where I think they sent out the statement to say, we're not firing this guy before that Saints game in the playoffs in 19. They still waited a couple of months to do this. So this is kind of their normal process. And I think a lot of the discussion had started because, hey, they did the first one with Zimmer after 2, but then the second and third ones were different. So I think this is going to be pretty common. I think they'll talk. I wouldn't be surprised if it's this week or even next week to get together and start on. I mean, they have the season-ending conversations. I'm sure it'll start to be raised as a topic then, at least to kind of set the groundwork for it.
All right. Well, you brought it up, and I'm going to find the proper button bar item.
Down memory lane we go.
So, do you believe in your heart of hearts? Heart of hearts.
Okay.
If the Vikings had lost to the New Orleans Saints, Kevin Stefanski would not have been the head coach next year. Or is it an unfair question?
Well, I'm trying to parse the way you phrase it. So do I believe that that Mike Zimmer would have been fired?
Yes, and Stefanski would have been the head coach and not the head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
There was a lot of chatter about that. No, I don't think they would have done it.
The scribe. Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling via Twitter. What about Kwesi? You mentioned it, but I mean, it's, because there was no Day of Lions, super comfortable, distraction-free type of bomb that drops. Multiple teams are looking to trade for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who, just to quickly and briefly and thumbnail sketch go through the past performances, 2022 draft and facets of free agency left a lot to be desired.
Yep, sure did.
The laundry list of free agents into this year and specifically with McCarthy, with the assumption that works out well and you have the quarterback, you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, obviously, and it works.
Yep.
Well, that's a massive turnaround and played into specifically the free agents, the 14 wins.
Yep.
So what about Kwesi and like before the combine?
Well, yeah, I would think they would do it. I mean, they want to keep those guys on the same track. Now, there is a different set of things to figure out with Kwesi because you mentioned the drafts. Mm-hmm. I think you have to look at all of that and say, is this a resume that plays the same way as Kevin O'Connell's? Now, they are not 14-3 this year without the work that they did in free agency. Full stop. That does not happen if they don't hit as many home runs as they did. And yes, Sam Darnold did not play well these last 2 games, and that's going to be part of the discussion about his future. But the year that he had, the year Aaron Jones had, the moves they made on the defensive side of the ball, that is the reason they ended up 14-3 in a year where a lot of people, myself included, thought they'd miss the playoffs. So he deserves credit for that, and I think the Wilfs like to have the GM and the coach kind of in lockstep in terms of their contracts. It will be interesting to me to see if they play it the same way with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah that they do with Kevin O'Connell, because the thing with Kevin O'Connell is there is a perception around the league, and this plays into the market that a coach might have if he doesn't stay here. Kevin O'Connell would have a very strong market. I think that part of what has been talked about is absolutely true. I don't know if it works the same way for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and there's a lot of reasons that we can get into for that. It's just a lot of how people kind of network around and how people are viewed, I think, play into these things. But
the fans don't know him as well as the head coach.
That is
because
a big part of it.
After victories, it's not Goessling
correct
pacing in the locker room, throwing out game balls.
There is that. I mean, there is all of that stuff that plays into these things. Perception matters. Branding, image, all of that stuff matters. And I think that goes into it. But I think the Wilfs are very happy with both of them and want to keep all of this stuff, kind of in lockstep as these two work together, especially if you're going to turn it over to a young quarterback. I don't think you want to be creating instability or kind of tinkering with the foundation because, every team that's successful in the NFL, that sort of tripod of the GM, the head coach, and the quarterback all being on the same page, all working well together matters a lot. And you need to look no further to that than Kansas City when they're possibly going to a third Super Bowl and they're 16-1 this year. So I think if they can keep those things together, they're going to be very interested in doing that.
What's the vibe or steam you can share with Brian Flores and his opportunity to potentially become a head coach elsewhere?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch that one too. So he's got requests from the Jets. He's got requests from the Bears and the Jaguars to interview for those jobs.
Jaguars?
Yep.
Out of nowhere.
I think it was all three that he got requests from. And there's been some chatter about the Raiders. I haven't heard anything formal about that. I think people maybe are connecting dots because Tom Brady and obviously Flores and Brady were together for a long time in New England. It's going to be interesting to me how that plays out because I think his stock was as high as it's going to get based on what happened during the season. Obviously, these last two games don't play terribly well for him either. When
I'd say 1.5. Where
sure,
I mean,
yep, I got you. The first half against the Lions, was really good.
I mean, Grenard was an inch from wrecking the whole. Jonathan Grenard. If there's a better free agent signing anywhere, and Van Ginkel was the bomb. Cashman was really good too. Jonathan Grenard was unbelievably good for this team. He was, and that's not just as a pass rusher. That's stopping the run. That's taking on blockers. That's taking on chippers. All of those things. He's really, really good. That was an absolute unqualified grand slam in free agency for them. So yes, I will give you that. And I think even if that strip sack that Blake Cashman brings back for a touchdown gets called a touchdown and not grounding on Monday night, or not an incomplete pass and not grounding either, that game may change if it's 10-10. So yes, I think Flores is going to have a lot of attention on him. I think he's going to have a market. I think it's also going to be something where he will look pretty thoroughly at what am I getting into with ownership? What am I getting into with a general manager? Now, if Ryan Grigson goes to the Jets and there's kind of a package deal there, maybe that's a good situation, but you got to think about ownership. I mean, he of all people knows that you have to be comfortable with the owners you're going to be working with. And the conversations I've had with him about this, every time we talk about it, he brings up, I like the fact that I'm not sleeping in my office, that I can make it to my kids' games. I can coach my kids' teams. Right.
The lifestyle, and he put it this way when I talked to him for that story that I wrote on Sunday last week. He said, there's kind of a window here. His kids are like 11, 10, kind of in that range where they've got probably another 6 or 7 years before kids start leaving the house. And that's where my kids are. My kids are 12 and 10. And I feel that on a deep level of, hey, the clock's ticking here, so you have to enjoy the time that you have with them. And, he talked about that in terms of, is this going to affect whether I take a job? So I think he's going to kind of look at all of those things. His family's going to look at all of those things. But at the end of the day, there are only 32 of these jobs. And if you feel good about it, then maybe you do it.
Yeah.
But I do think he's going to be pretty selective.
I've been infinitely more in thought about Flores and his potential to leave than I have with the head coach.
Me too.
And it's something that obviously Kevin O'Connell's contract needs to be addressed. But I do ponder if he leaves. And I think about the ripple effect of it. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's as easy. You're just going to throw, maybe it's Durante Jones or whatever the name is in terms of a potential successor to keep this train moving in the right direction. But whether it's influence potentially on the personnel side, identifying certain players, finding, how can I make Cashman work? And part of that connection, of course, with Van Ginkel being down in Miami prior. but that influence over personnel in combination with the scheme and several players and personnel that might not fit if we went to a 4-3 switch and some of those things, the ripple effect is really intriguing to me. If not, in some ways, a bit scary.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's 100% right. Because the thing with Brian Flores, too, and Kevin O'Connell has talked about this, is he started his career in New England in the front office. He has a scouting background, and I think that played very heavily in the moves they made defensively this offseason. Andrew Van Ginkel is as prominent an example of this as you'll find. This was a guy that the Dolphins had re-signed on a 1-year contract last year. Flores said they tried to get him last year, but he ended up staying in Miami. He signs here on a 2-year deal. He becomes a second-team All-Pro. So that level of this guy fits a particular role in our defense, and I know him because I've coached him, and I can also talk to the front office about how this will look. I can work on the ways we should value him in terms of the market. I mean, all of that stuff. I don't think he's sitting down with Rob Brzezinski and doing that, but you can compare him to the rest of the market and talk to scouts in a way that scouts understand as a coach, and I think that matters. I think a lot of the moves they made, I think Blake Cashman was very much something Brian Flores advocated for after he met Mike Sherrills.
Yep.
And Mike Sherrills told him, hey, you need to watch this linebacker, and Flores watched him and said, oh, yeah, this guy's really good. So a lot of those moves were driven by Flores being able to say, this is how this guy fits and what we want to do. Doesn't mean that Durante Jones or Mike Saravo or whoever else they'd bring in can't do that, but I think that's a pretty valuable skill set for them in this whole thing. So, yes, I think it's absolutely fair to worry about it. And Kevin O'Connell has been pretty supportive of Brian Flores. I mean, when I talked with him for that story, he said, I've supported fully. I have talked to him about, kind of structure of interview. I mean, they've both been through this before while coaching for a playoff team, so this was not new, but even discussions about who you'd bring with you as an offensive coordinator, all of those things, they've talked about it. So Kevin O'Connell is not sitting here surprised by it or worried that it may happen, but yes, it would have a major effect on how they operate, and I think it's fair to think pretty deeply about that as Brian Flores goes through these interviews.
How much say do you know or believe Kevin O'Connell has in personnel, in draft picks, who they take and why, who they sign and why? And I can't possibly see it being a Mike Holmgren with Green Bay or Seattle. Yeah. The coach and the vice president of football. I mean, it's all Brad Childress here.
Yeah.
Brad either said it publicly or to me or somebody else, I waited 30 years for this opportunity. I'm going to do it the way I think it's supposed to be done, for better or for worse. And or paraphrasing something like that. And he had say over all of personnel.
Yeah.
That's not Kevin's lot in life,
no.
But it doesn't mean he can't have a lot of say over personnel.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I don't think he has the final call on it, but I do think he has a lot of input on it and has had a lot of input on it. I mean, he meets with the Wilfs regularly. Kwesi meets with the Wilfs regularly as well, and a lot of the discussions that Kwesi has with the Wilfs, a lot of the questions they will ask is, have you talked to Kevin about it? What does Kevin think? A lot of the feedback that they get from the Wilfs is the check-in of, are you guys on the same page on this? I mean, I had these conversations when I was working on this story. That is very much something that the Wilfs are interested in having happen, that everybody that has to make these moves work is on the same page or at least can support it. I mean, that's very much something they drive in their thought process and drive in their decision-making that they want to see happen from the coach and the general manager. So I think Kevin O'Connell has a say in this. I think Kevin O'Connell has pretty open conversations with the people that pull the trigger. Does he do it himself? No, but I think there's already a pretty open line of communication in the way that they do business. Maybe he's looking for a little more of that. I haven't heard him say that. I haven't gotten the sense explicitly that he's looking for that. But as you're going through things of, hey, how can this work? I suppose that could be on the list. I think whether it's the quarterback, whether it's staying to pick Jordan Addison a year ago, I think he's had a lot of input on those things, and directly or indirectly, a lot of what he wants to see happen is considered, I think, in the decision-making process they have.
More season closing speculation and conversation with the sensational scribe. Ben Goessling from the Star Tribune of StarTribune.com is next.
The Fan wants to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword grand. You might win $1,000 with the keyword grand at KFAN.com.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have supervision, enhanced hearing, extraordinary reflexes, to be, dare we say, superhuman? Well, Roku's new Pro Series TV can't do any of that for you. But with a 4K screen, side-firing speakers, and a blazing fast refresh rate, it'll sure feel like it. Elevate your entertainment using all your favorite apps like iHeart and play all your music, radio, and podcasts with the new Roku Pro Series. Your senses aren't better. Your TV is.
Minnesota Vikings quarterback Matt Castle joins 9 to noon, about 30 minutes from now. He's part of a podcast in the iHeartRadio family, and it's with a man named Bobby Bones. And the show is called Let's Ball or Let's Chat or something like that. and the guests out of the gate, I think this podcast started this year, rolls out of the gate with Kurt Warner, Jared Allen, Tim McGraw, and then, like on all the news, Ian Rappaport.
Yep.
So Bobby Bones and Matt Castle are making some plays this day and age when it comes to the podcasting world.
Matt Castle, frequent
Lots
golf
to say.
buddy with Kevin O'Connell. Matt Castle and Kevin O'Connell, because they play together in New England. So I think they still stay in touch. And somebody was in somebody's wedding or attended somebody's wedding. But yeah, they're still pretty good friends, I think.
The iHeart podcast, if you are so inclined to search, is called Lots of Say with Bobby Bones.
Lots to say.
Lots to say. Lots to say. All right, 3-2 with Bobby Bones and Matt Castle. And the analyst, the co-host, joins about 30 minutes from now to chat about it. An hour from now, Chris Finch, head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, makes his weekly stop into the Love Covenant. But here's Ben Goessling, courtesy of Standard Heating and Air and StandardHeating.com. With the coaching situation, all names and everything, I want to land the plane like this. Is quarterbacks coach Josh McCown considered head coaching stock?
I think he is. I mean, he actually had interest before he came to Minnesota. I think the Texans talked to him maybe a couple of years ago about it. He was young at that point, but I think he'll probably have to climb the ladder a little bit. But yes, I think, people look for, can you be in front of a room? Can you command a roster? Can you send a message, deliver a message, have people follow you? And I think everybody sees a lot of that in him, so that, an offensive coordinator job, a head coaching job, I think is very much in his future. And a lot of the reason O'Connell brought him here was some of those points where he could connect with players and just coach the position from having played as long as he has in the NFL. I mean, I think a lot of the guys that make good coaches, it's tough to be the best of the best, and I think go coach, because you have that thing that I think Jordan had and Magic Johnson had, where these guys that are at the end of the roster are not wired like I am, so I don't understand how to work with them, how to motivate them, how to get the best out of them, because they're just not cut from the same material that I was in terms of drive or talent or whatever it happens to be. The coaches that have played that were probably a little more kind of having to hang on to the end of the roster. I mean, you see this in baseball, I think, with managers too, where if they've played, they haven't had great careers, but it helps them understand enough and then relate to the guys at the end of the roster a little bit more effectively. So McCown made a career of that and has seen everything in the NFL. So I think a lot of those things give him a unique sort of resume as he gets into this world and possibly get some consideration for it in the next few years here.
Mad Producer hit me with this text yesterday, maybe in the evening, and I think I have the answer, but I wasn't completely sure, so I saved it for you. Paraphrasing, do you think J.J. McCarthy will be ready to go by organized team activities in March, or like what's that timeline?
Like just from a health perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he will. I mean, it was a meniscus. It's typically, 8 months or so. So at that point, probably not even 8 months. I mean, I would think, yes, by the time they come back in April, I mean, even if you're talking 8 months, that surgery was in August. So that puts you at April. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I think he will be ready by the time players come back. And then, by the time you're on the field in like phase 2 of that, that's late April, early May. Yeah, I think he'll be fine.
Would the right to change the opinion be wrong or just ignore it? Where does Darnold play next season?
The thing is, I think there's certainly been interest in franchise tagging him. I wonder how much of that has changed after the last 2 days. I mean, I just don't know how you could.
Yeah.
And the original plan,
like franchise tag him, trade him to Cleveland for right guard Wyatt Teller and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, that would, I think, be the reason to tag him, I think, would be at least to be able to control what you get back for him and ensure that it happens sooner than next year. Because if he leaves, you factor whatever contract he signs into the soup of comp picks, and you also get canceled out. If they go spend a lot of money in free agency, they could lose him and spend all this money on other people, and they don't get the comp picks. So if they were to tag him, I think it would be from the perspective of we control this market, we set what we want, and we can get draft picks in 25 where we need them more so than we do in 26 where they still have the full boat of draft picks. So I think it'd be more that than signing him to be the long-term answer. I don't know how you could look at those last 2 games when everything was on the line and look at how he played. And maybe you figure he grows. I mean, O'Connell alluded to that, but I don't think you can bank on that. I just think that performance in that spot is going to be a factor in what happens going forward. And I say this not having had a lot of background conversations with people about it yet, but this is mostly me speaking from my own vantage point on it and knowing how they feel about McCarthy. I think that has to have had an effect on what they do long term.
Cam Bynum, unrestricted free agent, with bumper to bumper with Barrero yesterday, and he's a weekly guest. Cam, quote, "I'm when it comes to being with the Vikings, quote, I'm treating it like it's over, but praying it's not."
Yeah, I had the same conversation with him yesterday, very much along those lines. That's a position that they need. They're going to need reinforcements. I think Harrison Smith as well. But I don't know that you pay safeties a lot of money. I think it's going to depend on his market because he's great in terms of creating turnovers. He's been on the field a lot. I mean, he's been able to stay healthy remarkably well, played a lot of snaps the last couple of years. But you do see things with him, whether it's in coverage or sometimes open field tackling, where he has made some mistakes. So I don't know between that and between that position, if he's looking for big money on the open market, if the Vikings would pay it. They'll have money to spend, but they have a lot of holes to fill. And I 100% think they want to make a bigger swing on the offensive line. Kevin O'Connell said it the other night. I've heard that throughout the last number of weeks. They know they need a serious set of reinforcements in the middle of that offensive line. I think that is job one.
Yep.
And that's not a cheap job. They also have to sign corners, Byron Murphy or people from the outside. There's a lot of places where they're going to need to spend money. So if you're saying, $8, $9, $10 million a year, whatever it would be for Bynum, and again, I'm spitballing here, but I don't know that they would see that as a huge priority.
Agreed. Why did it fall apart so terribly the last 2?
Well, I mean, some of it was Darnold, certainly. I think holding the ball, whether it's reads or whether it's him just kind of footwork gets jittery, how much of it was nerves. I don't know that we're going to have a way to quantify that perfectly, but I think some of it was him. The protection certainly let them down. Dan Orlovsky had a really good breakdown of this on NFL Live yesterday of the ways that Sean McVay, kind of knowing the Vikings protections because he's coached with Kevin O'Connell, knew how to attack those and knew how to get free runners. A lot of the things you see Brian Flores do to other teams, Chris Shula did to the Vikings on Monday night. And certainly the Lions did some of this as well. So I think some of it was protection. Some of it was Darnold. Just that offense has to score in those spots. You're not going to win playoff games in 2025 without an offense that can move the ball, put it in the end zone, keep drives together consistently. I think that was a lot of it. I think the defense, even Monday night, I mean, they had a lot of receivers running open in the first half of that game. I did think they kind of tightened things up and kept it at least in a position where the Vikings could have come back if the offense was able to do more. So a lot of it, I think, just comes down to whether it was game plan, whether it was Darnold's performance, whether it was execution of the protection. I think a lot of it falls on that side of the ball.
Did Jefferson seem frustrated the majority of the season? And when I say frustrated, it mostly is because of the brackets and the triple coverage and the 2 for 20 at the Chicago and the picks at Jacksonville. Then it picks up a little bit, and then it's tough to get him into the end zone because of the coverages or him being missed multiple times like he was in Detroit.
Yeah.
Justin he's not the kind that comes out and just bashes.
No.
But nevertheless, we're around enough to wonder, it's unfortunate that in his first year with this new deal and a 14-win season and 1,500 yards or whatever and 10 touchdowns. Those are wonderful numbers, but really Justin is at least the way I see it, he's more of a thy than an I guy, but he recognizes the I is a very important part of the equation. Yeah. And when it's not coming through for whatever the reason, he gets upset. Do you agree with that?
100%. I think he understands. He even said it yesterday. He understands that he's really good. And I don't say that in like an arrogant way. I think he understands that because I'm the guy, we are better. The collective is better when I have the ball in my hands and when I have opportunities to do what I do. It's no different than, Jordan, Kobe, whoever saying at the end of the game, the ball needs to be in my hands because I know I'm going to give us the best chance to win. And you've heard those guys talk about that over the years. I think he comes at it a lot from that perspective. So the problem is getting him the ball is more difficult in the NFL than it is in the NBA, where you can play ISO and give Jordan the chance to go one-on-one at the end of a game. So, I think a lot of it comes from that. I think there was certainly frustration in the middle of the season when every week the questions are, hey, why aren't you getting the ball? Why aren't you able to get open? How do you beat all these coverages? And he and Kevin O'Connell talk about this constantly. There's always discussion of how do we free you and get you open and make you a featured part of the game plan. All of that, I think, happens enough that he's not in any doubt or wondering about my role in this offense. There's no equivocation on that. But yes, I think it did frustrate him. I think you see it on the sidelines a lot. Yeah, I think all of that is very fair.
You're excellent. And we'll see you out of the facility or in studio here, courtesy of Standard Heating and Air. And we look forward to the next opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Goessling, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. They have podcasts. We have YouTube from Ben's new in-home office, newsletters, and more. StarTribune.com. Don't leave.
What are you looking for in a new smart TV? 4K picture quality, high quality and immersive sound, a sleek design? All of those are givens, but only the new Roku Pro Series has all of those and the Roku streaming experience, an award-winning OS. Get fast, easy access to all your apps like iHeart, where you can stream all your favorite music, radio, and podcasts all day, and regular all-inclusive trips to Roku City. The new Roku Pro Series, a smart TV built by the streaming pros. Got it.
Vikings quarterback. 13 minutes from now, Chris Finch, coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, 11:35, and Nordo with a News du Nord right now, courtesy of
The Casino at Canterbury Park and CanterburyPark.com. I talk about feeling the felt, which you can do, poker, table games, blackjack all year round, but they have this bit going on later, just a couple of days, this weekend, really. It's the $100,000 bonus weekend that starts this Friday, the 17th, through the 21st. Canterbury's adding an extra $100K to the ultimate Texas Hold'em table game jackpot. So whatever the jackpot is, they're dumping six figures into that thing as an additional bonus and an opportunity for you to get paid. So love Canterbury already. How about some extra cash in your pocket? Thank you, Canterbury. Minnesota Timberwolves. Well, we got a double feature tonight, PA. And we'll get to the hockey team momentarily. But the Minnesota Timberwolves hosting the Dubs this evening, 8:30, while you were enjoying and really mostly not enjoying the festivities taking place down at State Farm. The Minnesota Timberwolves kind of were messing around with the Wizards, the worst team in the NBA, until Anthony Edwards just decided, you know what, this team's awful and our team's better, so I'm just going to drop 20 in the fourth quarter and we're going to cruise by the Wizards, which they ultimately did. Now they're hosting the Dubs tonight. It's a national game, 8:30 p.m. But I stumbled upon this as of a couple of days ago because Ant can't help himself. He's been fined a total of $285,000 this season.
How much?
$285K.
$285.
And this is from ESPN.com for 5 different behavioral transgressions, mostly for language. He was docked 100 for profanity during a live television interview, 75 in a profane public criticism of the officiating, 25K for profanity in a media interview. In November, he was fined 35 for making an obscene gesture on the court, and I believe most recently he was seen flipping off the refs. So he says, he's like, I'm not.
Seems mature.
Well, that's where I was going for. I don't know, how you broach that with, I mean, Finch has got to get a handle on that by and then also, meanwhile, at the same time, kind of keep Anthony on this trajectory that he's going. And it's not just that he has to score 40 a night for the Wolves to win, but if he's going to get that confidence, and I know it was against the worst team in the NBA, totally get it. But I need that Ant in as many games as I possibly can where he is uber confident, he's full alpha, and he's going to take over clutch moments in games and hit those shots versus large stretches of games where, especially now that DiVincenzo is going to be doing a lot of ball handling and of course Randall's going to get his. There are moments in games in the fourth quarter where Ant's like, it's almost like he's a 3-and-D wing waiting for his chance to take a corner three. No, that's not Anthony Edwards. That can't be. And in moments like
it can be. I mean, that because
he can hit any shot.
And this is part of the Finch conversation. Sorry to clip.
That's all good.
But when you sign up for Julius Randle, you sign up for a big who can run high post offense with ball handling skills, 10 of 10 better than the previous guy, and you can pick and roll with him. So in essence, it's point forward, Ant's over there, let's get the double, I got you.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily Luke Richard, Mba Mute, Trevor Ariza stand in the corner and hide, and if we find you, you should feel lucky that you're even on the team.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up what you did, because this is FIFA, Fairness and Fraudulence Act. And I'll look in the mirror here. Is maybe it's because of the vociferous, squealy, high-pitched nature, and I'm going to lose my voice the rest of the day by doing this with Kat. Ow! And screaming that like a child and then not getting calls for a month. It's Finch, I know, and he shared on the radio with yours truly. He worked hard. They worked hard on Kat.
Yeah.
Not with, ow! He just didn't do it right. Well, Ant does every bit the same stuff. He's just not as loud. He's just more coy and just a little more Captain Coolish with it.
Yeah.
But he's not getting calls. So that's I'm gonna put that in the mix today with Finch. I didn't have it in there, but I did have it with off what you. That's why I clipped on Edwards in the corner fourth quarter. That's it. The question I'm going to hit Finchy with, what determines if you run plays with Julius initiating the offense?
Okay.
They never were initiating the offense with Karl Anthony Towns.
Right.
He may have been the A topic, but and this is something that I'm telling you, it's going to be good in the postseason once they get it squared away. From DiVincenzo to Conley to Edwards, who can play a little point, to Randall, who can play some point and initiate the offense. I mean, those are a lot of versatile options you have there. But to play the 2-3-man game with Randall, free throw line extended or somewhere around there, initiating the offense, working through Julius not being a ball hog, that seems to be the bit right now.
Yeah.
But because you have to double Julius Randall in high leverage situations if he's in the key, if you don't want to get bounced, because he's incredibly clever with what he does with the head fakes and the shoulder shakes. You double him, well, there's your guy.
Correct.
In the corner, about ready to dagger you. And if he pumps and goes to the basket, we'll see what's happening lately. 8 of 8 from the line. at the nation's capital, Davie. He's getting to the line more. So I see these things morphing and developing ever so slowly. That's why off the radio last week, you said something to me. And then, we're talking about the Wolves during News Due North, and I'm like, well, I'm really glad I didn't do this, and pity those who did choose to dagger the Gobert move.
Right.
And be like, you're an idiot. Why does this guy even have the job? Are you kidding me? Because it went from 1 to 10
quickly
the next season.
Yeah.
This is happening in season.
Okay.
So it was a 0. It was a 1. It ain't a 1 right now.
Well, good.
Might be a 4 or a 5, but we still got a whole half a season to play with the postseason. So something I hated watching how this thing was working, man. It was I just couldn't figure out why. He's a ball hog.
Right.
It's clear the face of the franchise, the alpha, one of the very best in the NBA, is frustrated.
Yeah.
It's clear something's up with Conley, physically or whatever. DiVincenzo, his box scores are bad. Okay, now he's in the starting lineup, and his overall game is good.
Yeah.
So, see, it's changing a little. It's changing markedly more quickly than with that Gobert deal.
Yeah, that's fair to say. It just bugged me, and I don't know if you would have even been able to see it, but Saturday night was kind of the example I was giving or using in my head.
Oh, Memphis?
Oh,
I watched.
Yeah, because, and that's the thing is Randall's getting his. DiVincenzo, it's the first blow-up game really for him in that starting opportunity.
Yeah.
You have a tight fourth quarter. I want to see him run by Memphis because they're just so beaten up right now. And Anthony...
No, they got a Memphis team that's mostly back. And when you have Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, and Zach Edey, okay, that's a problem. Because that may not be a strength that's going to get them to the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
That's a lot of beef down there to grab every shot that's missed. And that's part of their calling card. But they just got Ja Morant back. So when you got Morant, those three, Bane when he's healthy.
Wow, Bane needs to shoot infinitely better than he has.
It's
He's
a
so
squad.
up and down, but it can be
They got a squad, you know?
But then Anthony not taking a shot and really handling the ball for like 7-8 minutes.
Agreed.
And then you're putting him in that spot where he's going to he tries those 2 threes at the buzzer.
Yep.
That just bugged me a bit, but if...
I know what you mean.
If ultimately that is, and specifically now that DiVincenzo's, getting this starting opportunity, Randall does need to get his. He does need to have those opportunities and play to his strengths. So
Julius needs to share.
The balancing act, however that, whatever the scales are weighted currently, let's level that out a bit if we possibly
It is.
can.
I think it is.
Okay.
I mean, it's Julius needs to share. Julius is sharing. What goes into Julius sharing? Julius needs to handle the ball. God gifted him with an ability at his height and size. The ball handling by Julius Randle mostly is the absolute bomb. I mean, you can do so many things with him, even in tight quarters. Well, you're eventually going to have to double him, or they're just going to keep feeding the kitty, and he's going to go for 30. All right, here comes the double. Well, now Ant goes for 40. So what's next? Is it getting more offense out of Gobert? I've heard that before. I hate that idea. Doesn't make me right. I don't think Rudy can catch. He can't catch a ball.
No, he can't.
So then you got DiVincenzo, McDaniels, the rest of them. Let's pause here, and we can reignite some news due north if you want, along with some of those goodbye chats.
Well, we got to talk. We got to talk to Matt Castle.
Yep, and also Kaprizov was at the morning skate today.
Kaprizov and Faber off to the side. Yep.
Oh, really? Okay, is that what it was? Yeah,
that's what Joe Smith said. Yeah.
All right. Do they play tonight or tomorrow?
It's 7:30 puck drop right here in the Fan hosting the Oilers.
Edmonton tonight. Then the Wolves are 8:30 against the Dubs. Chris Finch 35 minutes from now. Great conversation there about the Timberwolves. I love that. Matt Castle, former Minnesota Vikings quarterback, joins 9 to noon around the corner.
What are you looking for in a new smart TV? 4K picture quality? High quality and immersive sound? A sleek design? All of those are givens, but only the new Roku Pro Series has all of those and the Roku streaming experience, an award-winning OS. Get fast, easy access to all your apps like iHeart, where you can stream all your favorite music, radio, and podcasts all day, and regular all-inclusive trips to Roku City. The new Roku Pro Series, a smart TV built by the streaming pros.